Week 11 is in the books. Caleb Johnson, what a day it was, and what a season it has been.
But yeah, great games of basketball. Wouldn't have asked for a better finish than the last game of the year, leading up to the playoffs. So great game of basketball, and I'm excited for the playoffs coming up here.
Yeah, pretty special way to finish the season. So we're gonna make this a little bit shorter podcast. We're gonna hit all 5 games from Week 11. Upload this. You guys will hear it earlier in the week, and then you're gonna get a special surprise, a second podcast. There goes the surprise, I guess, later in the week, which will be a playoff preview podcast, and we'll take you through the bracket and all the different scenarios. So we'll jump right into it. Obviously, another forfeit from the Rockets in Week 11, which is a killer. The Heat improved to 6-5. The Rockets fall to 5-6, which ended up having a pretty big impact on the bracket.
Yes.
We can talk more about that as we do the playoff preview podcast later in the week. So the Heat finish at 6-5. They win their last 3 games. The Rockets actually lose their last 3 games, all via forfeit, to fall to 5-6. So they'll be a sleeper. I mean, they're going to be the number 7 seed, and that gives the Heat the number 5 seed. The Rockets are 5-2 in the 7 games that they've played,
which is crazy.
Yeah. So pretty, obviously that wouldn't put you in the 7 line if you were 5-2, but the 4 forfeits makes them 5-6. So 1:00 game started off with 2 iconic NBA franchises, the Lakers and the Celtics. The Lakers were one of 2 teams to hit the century mark yesterday. They went 100-72. Caleb, talk about what was a shorthanded Lakers team, but it just didn't matter with how deep they are and how well they played.
Yeah, and it sounds like this might be their roster moving forward. They might have Duckworth maybe for the playoffs, but it sounds like no Brian Hernandez possibly. So what we saw here, and also obviously LJ Harris.
We think they're going to have LJ.
So I mean, they may have some guys, but this could be the kind of the core they have. I mean, there was no really concern. I mean, first half was kind of back and forth. A classic Celtics game where they kind of hung around, hit some shots, and then the second half was kind of all Lakers there. They hit a lot of threes, like they always do, 14 threes. I wonder if this is the most threes made per game from a team in a season. It feels like the Lakers are always over 10. They shoot a great percentage from 3. Tone kind of got his offense going. Finally, I mean, everyone who's a part of the league, who's been a part of the league the last couple leagues, knows Tone Brooks can easily score 17, 18, 19 points a game at ease, but he kind of took a back seat this year to some of the other guys because they had such great depth. So seeing him getting 23 again was great. A good sign for him going forward for the playoffs, getting some momentum as they have some tough matchups coming up here. But Kwani Blackman, another all-league performance, 31 points, fantastic as always. Andre Robertson, an awesome game as well from him, kind of showing he can turn back the clocks a little bit, hit some threes, scoring 18 off the bench. A near triple-double for Andre Robertson Jr. He was talking about that before the game.
He was gunning for it, yeah.
He has six steals on top of 9 points, 16 assists, and 10 rebounds. So he was close.
And what's funny is Dre actually, so he finishes with 9 points. He missed a free throw to end the game. They thought they were 2 points shy of 100. It just wasn't updated yet on the scoreboard. So they ended up with 100. He thought they were still at 98.
Oh, man.
So he misses the free throw to try and get a tip in, which obviously didn't work out.
No.
All he had to do was...
double, and they still got 100 points.
points. All he had to do was hit the free throw. So he'll probably be like, you got to be kidding me.
That is brutal.
That's a bad beat right there if you had bet on a Dre Jr. triple-double. But yeah, good to see the Lakers turn back the clock here. And Tone Brooks is special because he's willing to take a back seat like he has this year. That's what makes him so special. So, Aaron Carr if we had a 3-point contest this season, he would have to be the representative for the Celtics, the way that he's shooting the ball from deep. Had little to no chance without Antonio Phillips. We assume he'll be there in the playoffs. I think we have to assume every team will be full strength in the playoffs. You've kind of had those dates circled on your calendar for a while.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. You never want to see a team go out in the playoffs not having their full team. I know you're probably having nightmares of that Bulls semifinal game from a couple years ago when they didn't have their full squad.
That was disappointing to say the least, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as long as that does not happen, we should have some awesome playoff matchups here, which we'll preview later in the week.
Absolutely, yep. So Celtics stay the 12th seed, as we knew they would. The Lakers will end up as the 3 seed, because, as you surely have heard by now, the Spurs did beat the Nets in Game 66. So Lakers will be the 3 seed. The second consecutive game where a team hit 100 points, you guys lit up a shorthanded Pistons team who had 5, but unfortunately could only play with 4. Mark didn't have his uniform. You thought 12 threes was a lot from the Lakers. You guys hit 19, and you hit 12 yourself, which was a career high game for you. You scored 36 points, which I kind of thought was going to be the high for the week, and Marquette Muhammad outduels you on the other side of the aisle. He has 38 for the Pistons, which is pretty funny, but probably a fun but also not fun game to play in a 5-on-4 game. I'm not sure you can speak to that. Either way, it's good to score a lot of points, though, and feel good going into the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I personally really wish Mark would have had his jersey. That would have been a really fun matchup, seeing him and Billy go head-to-head. Mark is obviously one of the league's premier scorers. So seeing them going toe-to-toe in a 5-on-5 setting, the game would have been a lot different. I probably wouldn't have had anywhere close to 12 threes, but it was a fun game to be in. Obviously, getting some confidence for our shooters. Seeing Jaquan hit some shots, he had a pretty good, I think a season high 16. Billy had a triple double, so getting him some confidence high. So yeah, it was a fun game all around. But yeah, I mean, I was talking to Mark during Marquette during the game, and he is like one of the best floaters I've ever seen. He's like a mini John Morant, just with his quickness, his speed, and his hesitation move, and he floats it. I mean, every one, probably 30 of his 38 points were floaters, and so the fact that he was able to do that 4-on-5 with basically, I mean, we had one guy roaming in the paint the whole time on defense, and he's still able to float over top. I mean, it was pretty remarkable a game from him. So he did outdo me, which props to him. But
yeah, he's very explosive. He adds a dimension that they don't have a lot of.
No.
A lot of size and a lot of guys who can, shoot and rebound, but he's really that guy who can get to the basket and a really good on-ball defender. So
I mean, a full roster for the Pistons with Mark and him. I mean, they're an upset team waiting to happen. I don't know who is it the Suns they play in the first round?
They want to play the Suns, yeah.
So I mean, that's a tough draw, but
obviously, yeah.
But a full team. I mean, they have a veteran team. If their whole squad's there, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pistons at least competed for 25, 30 minutes of that game.
Yeah, and if you told me that you ranked all the players in the league 1 to whatever it is, 115, and somebody put Mark and Capri both in their top 10, I would not. I would not say you're crazy.
Be there possibly, or is that
my understanding is there is a chance of that. He is back in the States. That would really be interesting. I think that would give them the chance to play with anybody. Yeah, I can't speak fully to his situation, but I do know he is back in the States. Their preseason ball is over, so I would assume he would be here for the next week, possibly two if things got crazy for the Pistons. But yeah, Mark and Marquette and Capri, that forms a very formidable team.
Absolutely.
And obviously you guys have kind of had an up and down season, but when you have a guy like Billy going into the playoffs, anything's possible with the size that you guys have and the shooters. So Bucks will be the 10 seed, the Pistons will be the 11 seed, and the theme, as we'll preview the bracket, is it kind of feels like one side of the bracket is pretty loaded. Mm-hmm. So for Bucks to be a 10 and the Pistons to be 11, with Billy and Mark kind of leading those teams, is I don't know that teams are lining up to play the Bucks and the Pistons in the first round, but that will be the nature of how things go. Warriors and Suns played in the game of the week at 3:00. First half was competitive. It was only a 6-point game at the half. Tyree Mosley was going crazy, as he likes to do.
Supernova first half.
Yeah, he finished with 31 points and 7 threes. But this Suns team that we saw was probably their best team they brought all season, along with the team they brought back in week 3 against you guys. I mean, those were definitely their two best groupings. No John Oliver, but yes to Jared Johnson.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the flip of when they had week 3. Anyways, good to see Vashon back. Kay Vasa, maybe a front runner for player of the week with the type of game that he had. Talk about how good this Suns team is and what their ceiling is. I think we know what their ceiling is. It's going all the way, but
yeah, there have been a lot of question marks about the Suns the last couple of weeks, just with who's showing up. Obviously, we knew once playoff time would come, we would probably see a better team. This team right here is scary. Like I said last time, the Pistons very tough draw. Because I think they are an upset team in the making. But if they have to play this Suns team, it's going to take a lot because Jared, Vashon, Jameer, Kavos, Phil Andrade, don't even mention Derek Dale, who showed up and just is a very savvy player. Kind of one of those guys who doesn't need the ball to score, but is a great defender, great facilitator. So I'm very very concerned for the teams who are in their path.
Yes.
Kind of circling that potential 3-6 matchup between them and the Lakers, as potentially the game of the quarterfinals. But yeah, that team is a well-oiled machine, and when they are all there, they're definitely a top, honestly, 2 or 3 team in my mind. The record is a little bit less because they haven't had this full team here the whole year, but when they are all here, they're unbelievably good.
Yeah, that hits the nail on the head. We're going to talk a lot about a potential Suns-Lakers game. The Suns have never beaten the Lakers, but they've also never had their full team to try and do it in 2 seasons. For the Warriors ended up being beaten pretty convincingly by the time this game was over. There was no question who the better team was. Would have liked to see Latrell get a chance to play more. Unfortunately,
Fouled out
against the Nets earlier in the year and then the Suns, 2 of the top, probably 3 or 4 teams in the league, he fouled out. Well, technically didn't foul out. He had 2 technicals, so he was disqualified against the Nets, but he didn't get to really play in the second half of either of those games. So I definitely think the game's closer if Latrell's in there the rest of the way. But don't know if that's enough to overcome what the Suns did. I mean, if the Suns move the ball like they did with Derek, with Jared Vashad, some incredible passing abilities. But the Warriors, I was actually joking with Otis last night, the Warriors did not feel good about that game. They were beaten convincingly. Otis was also disqualified. He had 2 technicals in the game, kind of lost his cool there. And looking back after yesterday, when you look at the bracket and how things unfolded, the biggest winner of the day was somehow still the Warriors.
Probably the Warriors, yeah.
They're going to be the number 4 seed.
They get to avoid the Suns, the Spurs, and the Lakers.
All on the other side of the bracket.
On the other side of the bracket,
yep.
Crazy.
And, a couple other teams that they lost to, like the Grizzlies per se, that most likely won't end up seeing the Grizzlies. So the Warriors not only lose, but they still get the 4 seed. They still get the bye. They'll play the winner of that 5-12 game, which is the Heat and the Celtics. And, if you're the Lakers, you're saying, how do you get to play the Heat when we have to play the Suns? But that's just how it fell. So maybe the Warriors are the winners of Week 11, despite losing by 18 points to the Suns. So pretty crazy. It's just how the tiebreakers felt. We can explain the tiebreakers in more detail in that playoff podcast. But basically, if 3 teams all have the same record, you look at head-to-head.
Yep.
They all went 1-1 against each other. So that doesn't do anything. So then you start at the top of the standings and work your way down.
Record against the 1 seed, 2 seed.
They all lost to the Nets. You go to the Lakers, the Warriors and Heat. I'm sorry, the Spurs, excuse me. The Warriors and Heat both beat the Spurs, and the Suns didn't. So the Suns become the 6, and then the Warriors have that head-to-head over the Heat. So that's why the bracket falls the way that it does. Warriors are 4, and the Suns are 6, which, again, is kind of funny after seeing, yes, bad English here. After seeing how much better the Suns were yesterday than the Warriors. But, again, if you beat a team like the Spurs, which they did, and you have that big win on your resume and that tiebreaker, that can end up being huge, and it was. And that ended up keeping the Spurs also from being the number 1 seed, because had they won any of those 3 games that they had lost coming into yesterday, that game would have been for the number 1 overall seed, which would have also been pretty fun. Grizzlies and Bulls, 2 more teams that are now tied in the standings, so the tiebreakers come into play. The Bulls take down the Grizzlies 78-69. Bulls got up big. Grizzlies kind of worked at chipping away at it a couple different times, but the deficit was too much to overcome. Talk about a good win from the Bulls.
Yeah, and you kind of hit it on the head right there. Is another good win. We kind of haven't mentioned that a lot with the Bulls over the years. Is they've strung together 3 or 4 really, really quality wins in the last month or so. And they're a hot team. They're a hot team, and a team that I don't think many teams want to play. And unfortunately for the Grizzlies, they get to play them again in the first round in the 8-9 matchup. So Bulls are hot. This is finally, I think, what the team that Bobby has kind of been wanting since he started the league, or since he's kind of branched off and done his own Bulls team. They've always had good players, but they haven't had a great team, if that makes sense. No offense to Bobby or his past teams. I think he can maybe agree in that in some capacity, but they finally have a great team, I think, with great role players. Nick Crow was a great addition. Jonas Switzer was a great addition. I think Carson Monk's been great. Those three guys have been really huge to kind of solidify their core as a really solid team, and they're hard to beat now because they have that depth when Seth goes out, when Bobby goes out, when Benny goes out. So they're going to be tough to beat. I will mention this as well. The Grizzlies didn't have Chris White, probably a first or second team all-league kind of guy. So not having Chris White there was a huge piece for them because he's a great interior defender and scorer for them. So look for him to come back hopefully for the playoffs, as well as Mendy Naylor, another solid guard for them. So great game from Walter Hudson though, kind of carrying the load for the Grizzlies. Not Chad White's best performance, but hopefully maybe saving some fireworks for the playoffs.
Yeah, the Bulls kind of always beat up on the bottom teams in the league. They're bigger, they're more consistent. But yeah, it's sort of lacked some of those big wins over some of the higher seeds in previous seasons. Outside of Lakers, I don't know what it is with the Bulls and the Lakers. So this is another really big win for them. And can we look back to a couple weeks ago? They were up on halftime at the Nets, and the Nets obviously are the number one seed. And we just kept talking about what this Bulls team could be. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. It may have been the game after, but I believe that was, if I'm not mistaken, the game where Nick ends up taking off and doesn't end up playing there in the second half. That might not be right. It might have been the week after.
Yeah,
I'm drawing a blank on that, but
either way, they can most definitely compete and beat with that Nets team if they get through the Grizzlies in the first round. So.
Oh, that actually, I think that might have been the Rockets game. But I just think back, like at one point you see kind of what we think is Nick's last Sunday there, and I'm thinking, man, the Bulls are in big trouble. And for him to come back and kind of rally with the troops, for them to pick up the wins they have and to get up to the 8 seed is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So definitely feeling different about the Bulls than we were a couple weeks ago. So the Bulls are the 8. The Grizzlies are the 9. These teams are going to play again next week in the final game of the round of 16 with the Nets waiting. And that's interesting because I think the Bulls and the Grizzlies both present a size, I don't want to say problem for the Nets, but they definitely will have a size advantage. Now, the Nets beat both teams, ended up winning by double digits against both teams, but it does present, especially in the playoffs, as things get real physical and guys are going for boards, an interesting dynamic. But second straight year, the 8-9 game is going to be a rematch of Week 11. You guys did that with the Knicks last year.
Yep.
Which should be interesting. Final game of the day, Game 66. You and Walter on the call. Take it away.
Wow.
This was pretty special.
Yeah. Very, very, very fun game to call, to watch. 2 high-level teams, a lot of high-level talent. Just big performances, big shots, big moments. So I'm hoping, kind of selfishly, that this is kind of maybe a potential. Obviously, for my Bucks' sake, I want to make a run. But if it's not to be, this would be a very fun championship matchup. Me and Walt were on the call. A lot of guys who are just friends outside the gym, outside the league. So seeing them compete and then also just have good sportsmanship and great kind of dab each other up after the game was awesome. It was fun to see. But the end of this game was wild. I mean, I felt like the Spurs were kind of in cruise control for a good chunk of the game. The Nets battled back as they always do. I mentioned on the call they're one of the most resilient teams in the league, if not the most resilient team. In classic fashion, they battled back, competed. And somehow miraculously had a chance after that amazing. I don't know if that Coach Chills Willis drew that play up, but the full court pass to Puda, the free throws, everything. It was chaos. The MVP chance, the gym was going crazy.
Yeah.
I feel for Puda. You had an amazing game. The game was that one free throw did not win or lose you the game because he had 27. You played great, but I know you definitely as a competitor want that one back. But big shot by Dennis in overtime. Only 13 points from Dennis, but he had the shot of the game to put him up. And just a big win for the Spurs going into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Fitting that the Nets are still the 1 seed. The Nets finished 9-0 in regulation and 0-2 in overtime, which is pretty funny. It was their first loss with Laster there, so they finished 9-1 with Puda there. And again, comes down to that free throw. Could have potentially, won the game on that. I think this game makes for a very interesting MVP race as we will tally up the votes from coaches and whatnot. Because Dennis and Martavius, even if they're not like 1 and 2 in scoring, both very much are worthy of an award like that. I think there's a lot of guys that could win it this year. But Puda was once again the best player on the court between what over the course of the season has ended up being the 2 best teams going at it. So I think that says a lot. So the Spurs get up to the 2 seed. The Nets are the 1. So, again, potential maybe final preview. There's so many teams that could be in that championship game. But in this case, you have your top 2 seeds square off in Game 66, which is pretty awesome. Definitely could not have predicted that when the schedule came out. Chris Green, I feel like I have to defend him on air. He has that airball free throw at the end.
Sorry, Chris.
This big cut on his finger from a kind of a freak incident with a razor blade this week. Seems like one of those things you'll see on ESPN when a guy gets hurt, or there was a guy in the Cubs a couple years ago that cut his hand washing dishes and had to miss some starts. Anyway, hopefully Chris can get that finger taken care of. In some ways, I'm actually glad he did it because it's set up for an incredible
one of the best finishes I've ever seen.
Yeah, all Chris has to do is make the 2 free throws or one of the free, and the game's over. And because he probably his only air ball in the history of his life on a free throw, it treats us to a pretty remarkable finish.
Yeah.
So that was pretty special, but very deservedly so. Those 2 teams going at it with the type of crowd and environment that they had. Mm-hmm. Spurs definitely have a tougher path to the championship game than the Nets do. But the Spurs have the experience and the depth to do it. So will we see these teams again in a couple weeks? Well, only time will tell. But, congrats to both of these 2 teams on an incredible season and just to everybody that's been in the league. So there you have it. Nets are 1, Spurs are 2. Lakers 3, Warriors 4, Heat 5, Suns 6, Rockets 7, Bulls 8, Grizzlies 9, Bucks 10, Pistons 11, Celtics 12. I know this is a shorter podcast, but we will have a very in-depth playoff preview podcast, and we will have again a bracket challenge this season for you. We'll get that posted all on the social media this week with a $50 gift card to come to the winner. So only had 2 people nail the Final 4 perfectly right last season. We'll see if anyone is able to do that again this season. So thanks again, Caleb, for great season, good work up in the booth and on the podcast, and we'll have another one for you here in a few days' time to preview what should be an incredible playoff atmosphere on Sunday, November 13th. Kicks off at 12:15 p.m., so hope to see you guys there. Just spend the whole day there with us.
Yeah, not going to want to miss much of the action.
Definitely not. So appreciate everybody. Thanks so much. What a great way to end the season with the Spurs and the Nets, and we'll be back with you in a few days' time to preview what should be another great playoff tournament. See you, everybody.